Learn English through stories with shadowing and conversation. Mrs. Caroline Bennett stood at the kitchen window, a cup of tea cooling in her hands. Her husband, Thomas, had been working in Manchester for 3 months. The money he sent helped, but the roof still leaked when it rained, and the garden wall was beginning to crumble.
Mum, the kettle's boiling again,
said Alice, the eldest at 18. Practical and neat, she always noticed the small things. She moved the kettle off the heat and gave her mother a quick smile.
Everything all right? Of course, love. Just thinking about the garden, it looks so pretty, but the fence... We'll manage,
Alice said firmly, though she felt the same worry. That evening, after their mother had gone to bed, the 3 sisters gathered in the small bedroom they shared. Rain pattered softly against the window.
We can't let Mum carry everything alone. We should try to earn some money for the repairs, quietly, so she doesn't worry more. I could sell some drawings of the village. The light on the church tower at sunset is beautiful. And I can help Mrs. Green at the village shop after school. She always needs someone cheerful behind the counter. Plus, I'll organise the spring fair stall for our lane. We'll make it the best one. I'll mend what I can here and perhaps help at the bookshop with the paperwork. He's always complaining about his papers.
They smiled at one another in the lamplight. For a moment, the old house felt warmer. The next Saturday was bright but breezy. The sisters worked together in the garden. Alice tied back the climbing roses with careful hands. Isabel sat on an old blanket, painting the flowers in watercolours. Rosie sang silly songs while she pulled up weeds.
You've got paint on your nose, Bea. And you've got mud on your cheek, little monkey.
A small shower arrived suddenly. They ran inside, laughing, and made tea. They sat by the window watching the rain fall on the blossoms.
Mum would love new curtains for the parlour, but we must be patient.
Later that afternoon, they walked through the village. The cobbled street was wet and shiny. They stopped to help old Mr. Thompson carry his shopping. Rosie chatted happily, making him smile. Isabel picked a few wildflowers for their neighbour, Mrs. Patel, who was feeling poorly. Small kindnesses, Alice thought, but they mattered. Not everything went smoothly. One evening, Alice came home tired after hours of sorting papers at the bookshop. She found Isabel crying softly in the garden because her best painting had smudged in the rain.
Oh, sorry. I wanted to help, but everything I do is too slow or not good enough.
Rosie, usually so sunny, had argued with a customer at the shop that day. She felt small. Alice sat between them on the old sofa.
We're all trying our best. That's what matters.
Remember when Dad left? We said we'd look after each other.
They talked late into the night, sharing their fears about the future of the house and missing their father. Isabel read a short story she had written about 3 sisters and a magical garden. Not magic, really, just love. They laughed and cried a little, then fell asleep together closer than before. The village spring fair arrived on a perfect May afternoon. Warm golden light bathed the green. The Bennets' Lane had decorated their stall with Isabel's paintings, Alice's neat bunches of garden flowers, and Rosie's bright smiles. They sold more than they hoped, enough for some new roof tiles and paint for the fence. That evening, as the sun set behind the hills, the family sat in the garden with fresh cups of tea. Caroline looked around at her daughters, her eyes shining.
I don't know how you managed it, my loves, but the house already feels ever so much happier.
Alice smiled quietly. Isabel leaned against her mother's shoulder. Rosie squeezed everyone's hands. A letter had arrived from their father that morning. He was coming home in 2 weeks. The girls had written back together, describing the spring blossoms, the village walks, and how they were looking after one another. As the sky turned pink and orange, a soft breeze moved through the garden. The old house stood solid behind them, a little worn but full of life. The sisters knew there would be more challenges, but they also knew they would face them side by side. In Meadowford, under the gentle spring sky, everything felt possible again. Now let's do some shadowing together. Listen carefully and repeat each sentence naturally with me. You've got paint on your nose, Bee. You've got paint on your nose, Bee. And you've got mud on your cheek, little monkey. And you've got mud on your cheek, little monkey. We said we'd look after each other. We said we'd look after each other. The warm spring light filled the garden. The warm spring light filled the garden. Rain pattered softly against the window. Rain pattered softly against the window. Rosie chatted happily and made him smile. Rosie chatted happily and made him smile. A soft breeze moved through the garden. A soft breeze moved through the garden. They would face everything side by side. They would face everything side by side. Before we say goodbye, Olivia and Harry are waiting in the studio for a cosy after-story conversation about today's story, British culture, and some lovely vocabulary. So grab a nice cuppa and let's join them.
Hello there, my lovely learners, and welcome back to English Natively. I'm Olivia.
And I'm Harry. We're really happy you've joined us for today's after-story conversation.
And first of all, a huge thank you to Margaret for that beautiful narration. Honestly, the atmosphere of Little Women felt so warm and comforting.
It really did. There was something very gentle about it, wasn't there? Even though the family had worries and financial problems, the story still felt hopeful the whole way through.
Yes, that's exactly what I loved about it. The Bennets weren't rich or living a perfect life, but they cared for each other so deeply. I think that's what made the story feel so cozy.
I agree. And I liked how every sister helped in her own way. Alice was practical, Isabel was creative, and Rosie brought energy and kindness to people around her.
Rosie made me smile so much, especially when she was chatting to customers and helping at the spring fair.
Same here. And the village itself almost felt like another character in the story. The blossoms, the cobbled lanes, the old cottages, the spring rain. It all felt very British.
Definitely. It reminded me of those quiet English villages where everyone knows each other and small acts of kindness really matter.
Right then, shall we talk about some vocabulary from the story?
Let's do it!
The first word is crumble. In the story, the garden wall was beginning to crumble.
So if something crumbles, it slowly breaks apart into small pieces. Usually old walls, biscuits, old stone or dry cake can crumble. Felt very British.
For example, the old brick wall started to crumble after the storm. Be careful, the biscuit will crumble everywhere.
And in Britain, we also have a famous dessert called apple crumble. It's lovely with custard.
Oh, absolutely brilliant on a cold evening.
The next phrase is practical and neat. Margaret used it to describe Alice.
If someone is practical, they're sensible and good at dealing with real-life problems.
And neat means tidy and organised.
So Alice wasn't dreamy or careless. She noticed the small things and quietly kept everything under control.
Here are a couple of examples. My sister's very practical. She always finds a solution. His desk is so neat compared to mine.
Next we have the word mud. Rosie had mud on her cheek while working in the garden.
Mud is wet earth or wet soil, especially after rain. Very common in Britain, honestly.
Especially in the countryside.
Definitely. You might hear, "My boots are covered in mud." The children were playing in the mud after the shower.
Which brings us nicely to our next word, shower.
In this story, it meant a short period of rain, a rain shower.
British weather loves a good shower.
It really does. 1 minute it's sunny, the next minute it's raining.
Some examples. We got caught in a sudden shower. There might be a few showers this afternoon.
And our last word today is parlour.
That's quite an old-fashioned British word. A parlour is a sitting room or living room, especially in older homes.
It gives the story a very cosy, traditional British feeling, doesn't it?
It does. You also hear it in phrases like tea parlour or ice cream parlour.
Which sounds adorable, honestly.
One thing I really liked about this story was the message about family teamwork.
Yes, nobody in the family was trying to be a hero alone. They worked together quietly and supported one another emotionally.
And I think that feels very real. Sometimes life doesn't suddenly become perfect. People just face things together.
Exactly. Even the little moments mattered. Drinking tea together, helping neighbours, writing letters, sitting in the garden at sunset.
The story reminded us that kindness and emotional support can completely change the atmosphere of a home.
And I loved the final image of the old house. It was still worn and imperfect, but full of life again.
Beautifully said.
So, Now we'd love to hear from you.
Which sister did you relate to most? Practical Alice, Creative Isabel, or Cheerful Rosie?
And what small thing makes your home feel warm and comforting? Tell us in the comments.
Thanks so much for joining us for today's conversation.
And another huge thank you to Margaret for that lovely story.
Don't forget to practice the vocabulary and try using some of today's expressions in your own sentences.
We hope you have a peaceful day wherever you are in the world.
Take care, everyone.
Bye for now.